Hello, and welcome to my channel. We're all about wealth or finance management, new business ideas, quick tips to make your life better, or anything that can help you in your daily life. Click the bell button, as we're surely going to change the way you think about daily life or business. In today's video, we're going to talk about how much money you should have. If you have ever thought about how much money you should have to live a good life, it's time to think again. In fact, there are two types of people in this world: those who spend too much money on things, and those who don't spend enough. It may be shocking, but the only thing that makes life worth living is your ability to enjoy it. That's what counts, not how much stuff you have or how much fancy pants you own. The only thing that matters is whether or not you're able to enjoy yourself without worrying about money. We all want to live the good life. But how much money do you need to have the good life? The answer is this: it depends. But first, it's important to understand that when people talk about the cost of living, they're talking about how much money you need to pay for things like housing, food, transportation, and utilities. It also includes clothing and other basic expenses like cable or cell phone service. The good news is that there's no single number that applies to everyone. And in fact, there are many different factors that can affect how much money you need each month. For example, if you're married with children and live in a city where housing is more expensive than average, then your cost of living might be higher than someone who lives alone in an area where housing costs are lower than average. But even if you move away from your city of residence and into another state with cheaper housing prices, or even another country, this doesn't mean your cost of living will suddenly disappear. It's still going to be difficult for you financially if your job pays low wages or doesn't provide health insurance benefits like those offered by employers who pay more. So what do you think about how much money an average person spends each month? If you answered not much, your answer was probably right. But it's important to remember that many of us use credit cards, and those purchases aren't always reflected in our actual bank statements or credit card statements. In fact, according to a survey done by Bankrate, they found that 25% of Americans don't pay their credit card bills on time, and 10% have never paid them at all. It's no wonder that an average American has about $8,000 in credit card debt. The average person spends about $600 a month, but this number can change based on your income. The average American household spends about $600 a month for food, housing, transportation, and other necessities. This amount is slightly lower than it was spent in the past, due to rising wages and lower gas prices. However, there are some people who are bound to spend some extra money than others. For example, if you have a family to support or live in a high-cost area like New York City or Los Angeles, then you may have to spend more on household expenses. We can see where this is leading to. If you want to figure out how much money you should be saving for retirement, or even just planning for your daily expenses, it's important that you know what people in your demographic are actually spending. You've probably always wondered that the more money you have, the more happiness comes around. Let's figure this out based on GDP, or gross domestic product per capita. Here are a couple of interesting and slightly surprising facts. The top 3 richest countries in terms of gross domestic product per capita are Luxembourg, first, Singapore, second, and Ireland, third. The top 3 countries in terms of quality of life are Switzerland, first, Denmark, second, and the Netherlands, third. It's interesting that the top richest countries are not always the happiest countries or top countries on the quality of life index chart. This proves that if you spend your resources carefully and intelligently, then you can spend a good life without being in the race of the richest. So how to increase savings without getting too miser? Let's start with food. If you're like most people, you probably don't have a problem with spending money on your food. After all, it's the fuel for your body and the main ingredient in everything, from sandwiches to smoothies to breakfast cereal. But how much can be considered too much? And what should you do if you can't afford your food budget? We've got an answer for those questions. A simple formula that tells you how much money you should spend on food every month. The first step is to have a check at your income and expenses. Next, calculate how many meals per day and snacks you eat.
and then multiply that number by the price of each meal or snack item, including any tax. That should give you an idea of how much food you need to buy every month. If you're spending too much money on food, then it's probably time for a lifestyle change. Another important and major expense is property. How much should you spend on your property or home? The answer is, it depends on the type of home you're living in. But before we get into that, let's take a look at how much home you should be spending on your mortgage. First things first, if you're looking to buy a house, your primary goal should be to find the best mortgage rate available for your area. If there are multiple lenders in your area competing for your business, make sure to shop around and compare rates from each one. It's important that you find the best rate possible. Once you've found the best mortgage rate, it's time to figure out how much house you can afford. This might seem like an easy task. Just add all of the monthly payments together. But if everything were equal, no extra fees, it wouldn't be that simple. After all, there are many different variables, including calculating what a monthly payment will be every month, including taxes and insurance costs as well as interest rates and other factors like property taxes and maintenance fees if applicable. The next thing to consider is how much money you should have in a retirement savings. Retirement savings are the most important financial goal you can set for yourself and your family. You should start saving early because the sooner the better. Fortunately, there's a lot of help available to make sure you get started early on. The first step is to figure out how much money you really need to have in retirement. That will depend on your age when you retire, as well as how long you plan to work after retirement, if at all. For most people, inflation is a major factor that determines how much money they'll need. Inflation is the amount of change in the cost of goods and services over time. It's not just about rising prices overall, but about how much things cost relative to their value at different points in time. You can use inflation numbers from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics Consumer Price Index, or CPI website, to figure out how much your spending power declines over time as inflation increases. It's important because it shows what kind of income your savings will buy. So what does this mean for those of us who are just starting out? Well, first off, it means we have plenty of time to save up some money so we can make our dream lives happen. And second, it means that we need to work hard at finding ways to cut down on our expenses as much as possible before our earnings increase, so much that it becomes easier for us to pay off debt or invest in something like an investment portfolio. How much money you need for a good life depends on your income and total expenses. You'll have to decide how much of your income you want to spend on things like rent, transportation, food, entertainment, and other daily expenses. You should also consider how much time you want to spend on work, whether that's part-time or full-time. The amount of money you'll have will depend on these factors, as well as the type of lifestyle you're trying to achieve. So that was our analysis of how much money you should have.
I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm sure you'll love our other ones too. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing so that you don't miss any of our latest content.